I'm Sarah.
And together.
We are unscripted.
So today is interesting. It is story time, paranormal story time.
Counters. Oh, I'm so excited to talk about this today. But before we get started, we got to let them know what's been happening, what we've been hearing.
Yeah.
See if it happens during our little story time here. We've been hearing some clinking noises, and I don't know where they're coming from. They're on my end. But I have nothing in my room that would make a clinking sound. So if you guys hear it, there's a reason for it. There's a story behind it. So we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, because I mean it before we ever hit record, I kept hearing and I thought, oh yeah, I don't know what that is, but and she's like, what is that? And I was like, okay, I've heard it too. Never mind. But yeah. So this is actually an upcoming pod that we were going to talk about with apparitions and the differences between an active haunting versus like maybe more of a residual haunting. But instead of doing that pod like right now, obviously we've got two stories when we were talking amongst ourselves that coincide with one or the other pretty much. So Sarah's going to go into hers and I've got one that's going to be more on like what I took to be is like the residual side. So now before we get started with yours, how long ago was this? Was this you were a kid when this happened, right?
With grandma? Yeah.
Okay.
With my great grandma, I think I was about 6 years old at that time. I was probably 6, maybe turning 7 at the time that I saw my first, actual spirit. So it was about 6 or 7. So I was really little. I've always been seeing things, but even when I was in my crib, mom said I would always point at things that weren't around. But this one, I remember clearly. So, because it felt too real to me, and I was 6 or 7 at the time. So, yeah, I was a kid.
So what were you doing? Go into it.
Okay, so I'm little girl. I'm sitting there. I'm in my bedroom. I lived in a house in Summit, Illinois. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that area, but that's where I grew up, and I was raised in Summit, in like the Summit, Illinois, Bridgeview area. So I was in my bedroom and I was sitting on the floor, and I shared a room with my two brothers. I have one older brother, one younger brother, but we all shared one room. And I had just sat down and I was playing with my Barbie. I had a Barbie and a Ken, and I was playing with my Barbie and Ken doll. And at that time, I had gotten a gift from my cousin, a little UV thing that transformed into a pool or something for the Barbie. And yeah, it was something. I didn't get many toys growing up, but this was something that was pretty much handed down to me from like a cousin or something. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm playing with my toys, minding my own business. My dolls are talking to each other. Barbie's talking to Ken, Ken's talking to Barbie. They're talking about, going swimming in the RV pool that I had, and that's what we were just doing. It was just me and my dolls. We weren't doing nothing. But I look up because I felt something, like I don't know what it was, but I felt like a sensation come over me. Maybe it wasn't really a warm sensation, just like something was different, like the air shifted somehow. And I look up and I see this tiny old lady, like standing right in front of me. And clear as day, as I'm talking to you now, she was literally all flesh, bones. I mean, she was an older woman, had to have been maybe late 70s, early 80s. But she was short and she was, had the, curly gray hair, and she had, glasses that literally was on the tip of her nose like this, Here, I can actually show you. I got my glasses. Hold on.
I was gonna say classic granny style.
Yeah, classic. She was just.
Aw, yeah.
So she had her glasses on, and she was just staring at me. Like, she didn't say anything to me. She was just staring, and then she like smiled at me, and I smiled back. I didn't feel any sense of dread or horror, or I wasn't scared, because I literally thought, one of my mom's friends or somebody came in,
Yeah.
and I was expecting them to, say hi to me or something, but she didn't say a word. She just stared, and then she gave me this cute little old lady smile. Just the
Yeah.
type thing.
Aw.
It just made me feel good, it just felt, like, really warm, and I felt happy, and I had no problem playing with my dolls in front of her, and she just stood there and, just kept nodding, when I'm playing with my doll, she's just nodding her head, and her glasses are on her tip of her nose, and she's just smiling, and okay, so it lasted probably I think she was with me for maybe a half an hour or so while I was playing,
Okay.
and then I
Really?
and then I heard my what?
So she was really watching. Okay.
Yeah, she was there for like a half an hour. I literally thought she was just a friend of one of my family members or something. I didn't know who she was. Like I knew her. Like somehow I knew her, but I didn't know how I knew her. But I wasn't afraid, and I remember mom had called me out for lunch. It's probably about 12:30 in the afternoon. Mom calls me out for lunch, so I said goodbye. I said, "I'm sorry, I gotta go. Mom's calling me." So I went to go eat my lunch, and when I came back, she was gone. Like, completely gone. But the weirdest thing is, that was the encounter part, but it had to have been 3 weeks to maybe a month later. I'm over at one of my cousin's houses, and I'm looking, just walking around the house. They have a bunch of family pictures all over the house, and I saw the old lady that was in my room. I saw her on one of the pictures, and I pointed out to my mom because I had told my mom, I had, somebody visited me, this lady. I asked her who she was, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure she thought it was like imaginary friend
Yeah.
thing,
Right.
but I saw the picture of this lady in my cousin's house, and I'm like, "No, mom, look. Look, that's the lady I saw. That's her." And she looks at it and she's like, "There's no way that could be who you saw." And I'm like, "I'm telling you, that is her." I said, "I remember the glasses. She was wearing the same outfit she has in that picture."
Okay.
I said, "She had her dress, she had her cardigan. That's what she looked like
Mhm.
in flesh, right in front of me." I'm like, "Molly, this is who I saw."
Right.
My cousin and my aunt, my cousin's mom, came in, and she comes up and she's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "I saw her. She was in my room." I told him a few days ago, but it was a few weeks.
Yeah.
But I was a kid, I was
Yeah.
6.
Exactly.
And and my aunt, which is my great aunt, whose cousins, it was my great aunt, and she goes, "Honey, that's your great grandma, and she died years ago. She died at least," she says, "you weren't even born when she died."
Yeah.
And I was 6.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "No, that's not true. She was in my room, and I was determined that they understood me. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw."
Right.
And then they asked me, like, "Well, did she say anything to you?" I'm like, "Well, no. But, she smiled and she nodded and she was watching me play with my Barbies." So that was the first actual paranormal encounter that I experienced, you know, flesh and bone, real in my, in my life. That was the one that I remember clear as day. And it came to find out that it was like a great grandma or something that I never met him. I never met her at all. And so yeah, that was incredible. But she was literally looking like you and me, like I'm looking at you right now. That's how close we were. We weren't but like 10 feet from each other.
Wow.
And she was just there. So yeah, that's my paranormal story.
You
And that's when it started at 6.
I'm saying you hear a lot of stories where kids talk about, they see and they can't differentiate. I mean, heck, most adults can't even sometimes differentiate between, a person, they're going through a cemetery and they're like, I saw this guy through the cemetery and all of a sudden he's not there, because they're
Mhm.
not transparent like, you would most people take. I mean, not that they can't, you know, be because obviously there's all kinds of variations of apparitions, but that's you hear about that all the time, like, past
But
from
especially in kids' minds, they don't know that they're not real. When you literally see somebody, you can feel their breath on you. You can feel them, right around you. I had no idea, but I was dead set telling him no, she was with me in my room while I was playing Barbies.
yeah,
And I never ever strayed from that story. I did, however, get told by my mother not to talk about it.
that was.
She said you don't yeah, she says you don't wanna talk about it. She goes, "Just keep it to yourself. You could tell me, but don't go around telling everybody that you saw that woman."
Yeah. Very different
I
days.
had no idea why.
And now we've got moms, recording for a TikTok video. Oh, tell everyone, tell these perfect strangers about the man under the bed, or ugh, they do it for views
Yeah.
probably, but I mean, it
Mhm,
happens. Like I was saying, you always hear these stories about, you know, relatives, like kids are like, "Oh, I saw he said to call him Papa." Well, Papa wasn't around when
mhm,
he was born, but you know,
mhm,
he was somebody that the family would have been like, he would have wanted to have been there for their birth and have been involved in the kid's life. So it's kind
mhm,
of comforting to see them coming to visit,
mhm,
after.
and it makes you wonder, do our loved ones actually leave us when they die?
That's another pod, girl.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna have
That's another thing we gotta talk about. But go ahead, what's your story? Because you were saying something similar, but it was a slightly different variation.
so yours, yeah, would be not a haunting, but like a visitation.
Mhm,
So mine, I don't think it was. I guess it would be visitation, but for some reason I felt like it was residual, and I'll get into it. So I was probably, I think I was 11, maybe I was 12. I was in 7th grade. So I mean, I was one of, I don't know.
I think you were 12 in 7th grade because I was 13.
Yeah, because my was summer birthday. I
Mhm,
oops, had so much knocking down my stuff. I don't know. I think I may have been 11. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
mhm.
so my mom and I and my little brother, we were visiting with one of my aunts out in oh my god, what is it? Manhattan.
Plainfield, Frankfurt,
No, no,
Midlothian,
Manhattan.
Manhattan. Oh,
So we were, by like Tinley Park and stuff, not too close, but yeah. So we were visiting with her, and I was gonna sleep in my cousin's room. And there was like this, like, she was like up, she had like bunk beds, and I was on the opposite side. And there was the door right by me, so I can't really explain it. I suck at this. But anyway, if you're seeing me, ahead of me is where my cousin was in the bunk beds, and then I'm against the other wall, and then in between the both of us is the doorway out into the hallway, and you can clearly see the stairwell that goes downstairs, and then the bathroom, which kept the light on because my cousin, she was younger at the time, she didn't, like the dark. I still don't like the
mhm.
dark, so I get it. But I couldn't sleep, and I would always listen to like my Walkman. I know, I'm not old, shut up. But
We're not saying a word. Keep going.
anyway, so I was trying to like listen to some music or whatever before, I was gonna drift off to sleep. And I remember I was on my side, like I was facing the wall. And I was like, well, this isn't really comfortable. So I flipped back over, and when I did, something caught my eye. And I looked, and I was like, ugh, because there was a guy standing right outside of the door. And he was like, he wasn't heavy set, but he reminded me of like Fred Mertz from I Love Lucy. So,
Okay.
but literally, like, to the same, like, he had like the white shirt, the overalls, like the suspenders that you could like snap and like,
Mhm,
connected to the pants and stuff. I mean, I even saw down to his dress shoes, but he never looked at me. And he had his hands in his pockets, and he was just like standing there, and he was kind of like rocking, and he was staring at the wall right over the railing. And I'm just thinking, who is this guy? How did he get here? So I'm like frozen, thinking, I can't get up and close the door because he's right there. And if he's gonna come in, I'm right there. Like I'm gonna get eaten or something. So I don't know. But my aunt, she had a bunch of pictures on the wall. And they were pictures of like her and her husband's wedding, her and my mom's mom, um, just, older family pictures. And he was staring, from what I could tell, at my grandma, my mom's, mom. And I was just
mhm,
like, he's just staring. And he didn't, there was no way for me to believe that he didn't know that I was like looking at him, because I was like right there. But he didn't,
mhm.
I just thought, well, he just doesn't care, that the door's open. But his sole focus was on that picture. And then I just kept staring, and eventually he just got like more transparent, and he just completely faded away. And I was just like,
Oh, wow.
okay. And I remember,
Wow.
it took me probably 10, 15 minutes to, you know, stop freaking out. And then I had to pee. Of course I did. So, I had to get up and I was just like, looking around like, is he really gone? Where is he? And the next morning I was like, because my aunts, they're not into the paranormal. They were kind of like your mom.
Mhm,
They were like, what?
mhm,
That's not true or whatever. But my mom, she's all for it. And I was like, she's like, what? And I was like, I can tell you what I saw. She's like,
mhm.
and I told her, she's like, oh my God. She's like, hold on. She's like, they've got photo albums downstairs. She's like, come on. We're flipping through. And I'm like, him. I was like, that's him. Guess who it was? It was her great grandpa. It was my mom's dad. That's why he was staring at her picture. He even
Oh,
had the same
that's
thing. Yeah,
cute.
so it was sweet, but I mean, that made me think, was it residual because he didn't interact? Had he been there before, he just kind of stared at the picture? Was that just like a routine thing for him? But I mean, he had never been at that house before, so I guess it can't be residual in that aspect. But he didn't.
Maybe like a residual memory, perhaps, that was manifested by, the grandma, the girl in the picture. Maybe it was like a manifestation that she created, because that we can create our own manifestations based on our desires.
Oh,
If she wanted to see him again, or, be around him, she could have created that in her own way. I mean, it's a possibility, but I'm not sure. I don't know if that would be
I
residual or not, but
take it back.
it's still incredible.
I don't think it's residual at all. I take it all back. I think what it was is it was just he. Okay, scared me. Sorry. One of the kittens was playing with something. I was like, what is he playing with? But anyway, I think it was probably he was visiting often and
Mhm.
he was just kind of checking up, probably like, your grandma was. Except he wasn't
Yeah,
on us, at least not at that time. Maybe
he was checking up
he
on
was just kind of
his loved
looking,
ones
yeah,
that.
just admiring.
Mm.
I don't know, interesting though, because my grandma was passed away at the time too. So I mean,
Mhm.
he would see her on the other side. I don't know why. Maybe he was just admiring. Oh, that was a nice photo. I'll go back and tell her.
Memories, maybe he was just reliving memories. Uh-oh. There we go. I don't
I
it
think
just
a phone
yeah, it
call.
muted, but we're good now.
Well,
So,
anyway, that was
let's
a
see what
story.
happens. Of course, this is what happens when we do paranormal stories. So,
What
but that's the
or
incredible
something.
story. But yeah, it actually makes you think that, again, like I said earlier, are we actually alone when they pass on, or are they still here and it just takes certain triggers to bring them out?
That'll be another podcast. But yeah, so that was our story time. And we will
Mhm.
have more upcoming because Sarah and I can write a book, quite literally. The next
Probably a
time
library by this point.
there's just a lot. But I mean, it's cool that we can incorporate some of our topics in with some of our personal experiences.
No,
So
absolutely. Okay, that sounds awesome. All right, well, we'll call it here. So, again, as everybody knows, we are unscripted. We are we are paranormal people. We are,
people. Or spooky.
into all of that crazy spiritual stuff, and we are all about like getting to know, who you are and what you guys experiences are. So again, share with us your memories, experiences. You can still reach out to our email, which I'm not going to butcher, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
I was
Amy
waiting.
can do
Come
it.
on. Try it. Give it a try.
Unscriptedparanormal@gmail.com.
I knew you had it in you. It'll be
Okay,
linked down below too, so you'll be able to
along with
find
the
it
rest
in
of
the
our along with the rest of our social media accounts. So just reach out, talk to us, and tell us some of your paranormal experiences. And what do you think it is? Do you think what Amy experienced was a residual or an actual apparition manifestation? And me, what do you think mine was all about? And how would I have known somebody that I never met? So I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. So until next time, I'm Sarah.
I'm Amy. Keep it creepy.
Keep it real, and we'll catch you on the next time.
Bye.